Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gajananam Bhutaganaadisevitam Kapitha Jambu Falasara Bhakshitam Umasutam Shoka Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam. Namaste. Welcome to DISHA session 36. DISHA is an inward journey to discover our inner strength and happiness through the Bhagavad Gita. We will continue our study of chapter 8, Akshara Brahma Yoga, studying verses from 5 to 14. We have with us the eminent and eloquent Dr. Ahalya to take us through these verses. She will also explain Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga as explained in the Tattva Bodha. Our teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde, will reinforce these concepts through his simple and effective words of wisdom. After the talk, we will have a teaching quiz by Srimati Vani Bhaskar. Now it's shloka time, and we have with us the veteran Srimati Rama Gopal Krishna to chant and explain the shloka of the day. This is the shloka with which Dr. Hegde sir begins every class. You guessed it right? Let's understand the meaning of Sadashiva Samarambham. Over to you, Rama madam.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. This Guru Stotram is commonly chanted to offer namaskaram to the lineage of Gurus before the start of Vedanta Vichara. This Advaita Sampradaya Guru Parampara Shlokam pays tribute to the prominent Gurus of Advaita philosophy. Having a Guru is like having everything you could ever wish for. It is only at the feet of the Guru that one's heart finds solace and security. The love and care of the Guru towards Shishya is beyond words, beyond words and measure. Every Guru Shishya tradition claims its origin in the eternal, starting from either Sadashiva or Narayana. Ishvara with Maya manifests as Adi Guru Sri Dakshinamurti. An uninterrupted succession continued through my immediate Guru. The significance of Guru Tattva is shown in the next slide. Sadashiva is one of the highest forms of Shiva, usually depicted with 5 faces representing the 5 elements and 5 powers of Shiva. Sadashiva is perceived as eternally pure and auspicious. He is the only Guru expressing through everyone who dispels the darkness of ignorance. We should recognize and surrender to him completely. Samarambham is in the beginning of the manifestation of this universe. The consciousness principle alone was there. Shankaracharya Madhyamam. Madhyamam means in the middle with reference to the beginning of time until now. Sri Shankaracharya is regarded as a manifestation of the silence of Sri Dakshinamurti. Since the disciples were unable to understand the teachings through silence, the Lord himself incarnated as Adi Shankaracharya. He imparts self-knowledge out of compassion to people immersed in samsara even today. Asmadacharya Paryantam. The lineage continues through my immediate Guru. An Acharya is a wise and compassionate person. So what should we do? So Vande Guru Paramparam. I surrender to the lineage which originates from God. I bow down to the tradition and eternal flow of knowledge that we are placing ourselves in. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you very much, Ramaji, for a nice explanation of this mantra, which Swamiji uses before all his talks and which we also use before our classes. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. In the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, deals with a new type of mukti called krama mukti. Sometimes we encounter such questions. Why should I study the scriptures? I am deeply religious. I lead a moral and ethical life. I do the best to my family and to the community. The background question which is not expressed is, what happens to such a person after death? This particular chapter will answer those questions. What happens to a person who is deeply religious, who is leading a moral, ethical life, particularly a person who does Saguna Ishvara Upasana, who has an Ishta Devatha? If I surrender to my Devatha, now isn't it the responsibility of the Lord to take care of me? And that is what we will see in class today, that the Lord will take responsibility for such a bhakta. And if such a person remembers God all the time, also at the time of death, Sri Krishna gives a lot of importance to remembering God at the time of death. And today's class will all be on remembering God at the time of death. For such a person, it is the Devatha's responsibility, your Devatha whom you have trusted, to see what happens, that you get a kind of mukti called krama mukti, which is posthumous. But then to all those of us who are listening to these classes, who are part of these classes, who make a lot of efforts to understand the Gita and the Upanishads, I would like to say that I've taken a shloka from the Viveka Chudamani, which goes like this: Durlabam thrayam evatad devanugraha hetukam manushutvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha samshraya. Now, it says there are three things which are extremely difficult to get, and three things we have got: human birth, a deep interest in pursuing Parama Purushartha or Moksha, and to be able to find a right depth for Guru. We are blessed with all the three. And when we have all three, why not work for Mukti while alive? And this is called Jivan Mukti. However, we still can be religious. We still can have Ishta Devatha Upasana to be able to ensure that for some reason, if I'm not able to attain in this life, it is the responsibility of my Lord to take care of me after my death. All these related questions will be answered in today's class by Dr. Ahalya. Dr. Ahalya, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. The set of verses we have for DISHA today are very practical, very important verses. It is like a user's manual that Krishna has given, unless one has become a Jivan Mukta. The greatest fear we have is that of death. Overcoming the fear of death, probably, these set of verses will help us. We fear death because we don't know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what happens after death. However, this thought of remembering God at the time of death is very much followed in the Indian culture in spirit, if not by the letter. All the Indian Bhakti literature is full of such references. We heard Dr. Hegde tell us about Samprapte Sannihite Kale Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dakrin Karane in the last class. Kanakadasa says, Marana Samayadalli Ninna Charana Smarane Taruni Sayya Narayana. Purandaradasa says, Antya Kaladalli Ninna Chintiso Hage. We have heard that in Ishavasya, in Katopanishad, in most of the Upanishads also. DVG tells us, Mrityuvim Bhayaveke, Deshantarakkoiva Mitranatham, Satvikate Bala Naldavang Yettalem Bhayavihudu, Satra Hosadihudu Nade Mankutimma. If you have lived your life in the Ishwararpana Bhava, Ishwara Prasada Bhava, if you have done the Sattvika activities, what is there to be scared of? Tagore echoes the same feeling and says, death is not extinguishing of the light, it's only putting out the flame. Let's see what are the contents we are going to cover in today's class. Why should one remember God at the time of death? We understand this in verse 5 and 6. How to remember God At verses 7 and 8, what are the various descriptions of God? Verse 9, the description of a yogi. Verse 10, what is that imperishable goal? Verse 11, what is yogic concentration and the importance of Omkara? 12 and 13, how to remember God all the time? Verse 14. The fifth verse goes like this: Anta kalecha mameva smaran muktva kalevaran yah prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. Those who relinquish the body while remembering me at the moment of death will come to me. Madbhavam yati. This is the word to be remembered in this particular shloka. This word talks about krama mukti. In fact, we understand that there is arthapatti pramana here. Yatra ekena uktena aparasya anuktasya arthagrahanam bhavati. When one sentence is uttered, the unsaid is also understood. That is what we see in the word madbhavam. He does not explicitly talk about Kramamukti, but this word tells us so. Swamiji explains it beautifully. Upasana, we know, is of many kinds, the Sakama and the Nishkama, very importantly. And there are two kinds of Nishkama Upasakas. They are, one attain Jivan Mukti or Sadhyo Mukti, whereas the other Nishkama Upasakas, for want of Guru Shastra Pramana, may not end up getting the Jnanam, but still they are eligible, and therefore Krishna says they get Krama Mukti. A Nishkama Upasaka will go to Brahmaloka, get Nirguna Ishvara Jnanam, and as a result will get the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. This method of Ishvara Prapti is Krama Mukti. The entire Madhyama Shataka Upasana is the Sadhana. In the 7th, 9th and 10th chapters, Krishna talks of Sadhyo Mukti. This is one chapter where he talks of Krama Mukti, probably since it takes us apart, like a boatman. Therefore, this is called as the Taraka Brahma Yoga or Akshara Brahma Yoga. Why should one remember God at the time of death? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tamevaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitaha. These are the words here. Sada, always, tadbhava, Ishvara bhava, bhavitaha, repeatedly. It is well known that Krishna again says that the next janma of the person will be determined by what the person remembers at the time of death. The story of Jadabharata is very well known. But do we know when is the time of death? No. Then when should Namasmarana start? It must start here and now. Since the time of death is unknown, the preparation should start right now, is what he says in this shloka. And how should it be? Constant practice, conscious practice, and a very sincere attempt. The conscious mind must be so full of it that it percolates it saturates the subconscious mind as well. We know that the vasanas get stronger as we grow older and the willpower becomes weaker. We don't know what is the state at the time of death, whether there is a willpower or not at all. But however, the vasanas operate. And if it has to be the Shubha Vasana operating, the constant thought must be there always so that one can remember God at the time of death. Because we very well know that our thoughts make our destiny. Our destiny is because of our character. Character is because of habit. Habits are because of actions. Actions stem from words, and words stem from the thoughts we have. Therefore, remembering God becomes very important. In the next shloka, he says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha mayarpita mano buddhihi mame vaishyasya samshayah. So he says, always remember me. And to Partha, he is saying Yudhya. He's a warrior and therefore he says, you fight. The word Yudhya actually implies Swadharma Anushtana. To do our ordained duties all the time thinking about the Lord is what he is saying. So keeping Ishvara in the subconscious mind is what this shloka is telling us. Can one perform his duties and remember the Lord all the time? A question that can pop up in anybody's mind. because we know the mind can do only one thing at a time. Anutvam atacha ekatvam dvaucha gunau manasah smritau, it is said. But when the conscious mind is engaged in the duties, the subconscious mind should be clear about the priorities of life. The Lord must remain in the subconscious mind all the time, like a Tanpura Shruti in the background and the Ragalapa that goes on prominently. So, Lord's name is like the Tanpura Shruti, and our daily activities would be like the Ragalapa. Through all of life's activity, we must train ourselves to be soaked in His thought. Mayarpita Manobuddhi, to be emotionally dependent on Him rather than any other mortal. Again and again, we are told that Saguna form is not the ultimate one. However, it is very important since it represents the highest reality. Saguna Upasana is an alampana till one is able to appreciate the Nirguna Brahman, or the abstract truth. Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena Chetasa Nanyagamina Paramam Purusham Divyam Yati Parthanu Chintayan. In fact, to this shloka, we need to add the word prayana kale from the 10th one. Prayana kale abhyasa yoga yuktena. That is the meaning. O Partha, constantly thinking of the Lord with the mind, that is undistracted. Nanyagamina, doesn't go anywhere. Due to the practice of meditation, abhyasa yoga yuktena, one attains the supreme. Paramam Purusham Divyam. So the subconscious mind can have Ishvara Chintana, while the conscious mind performs worldly duties. When one has time away from the worldly duties, the conscious mind also can be in Ishvara Chintana. It is like the group of women who talk, giggle, do everything, balance the pots, very mindful of the water that they are carrying back home. That's there at the back, but they are doing all that they are supposed to. So that is how one remembers God at the time of death. In fact, the word Purusham actually means Purayati Sarvam, not just Puri Sharire. It is Purayati Sarvam, that is the Lord who is Vibhu, who is Divyam, Chaitanya Rupam, and Paramam, the ultimate. So the condition of our mind at the end of our lives is the result of everything that we have done in our entire life. Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by being trained by the strength of regular practice. The word Abhyasa comes quite a few times in the Bhagavad Gita. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha krishyate. In fact, the word abhyasa means Sheelanam satata kriya, to change the samskara by satata kriya, constant practice, and nanyagamina. So a mind which is not going anywhere else, not distracted at all. Such constant lifelong practice alone will help the bhakta fix his mind on him. Shubha vasanas remain, and at the time of death, chanting becomes effortless, leading to Kramamukti. The meter in the 9th verse changes, and we have the change of meter always indicates that there is something important. There's a change of the context that the Lord is trying to tell us. Bhagavad Gita is in Anushtup Chandas, and this is in Trishtup Chandas. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anoraniyam Samanusmaredyah Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasaha Parastat. Many descriptions of God are given here. We have the Saguna form, the Nirguna form, and the Saguna and Nirguna form. Yaha Anusmaret, one who reflects on. Kavim, one who is Sarvagnya. Anushasitaram, one who is in control. Sarvasya Dhataram, the Karma Paladata, creator of everything. Achintya Rupam, one whose form is unimaginable. Puranam, Anadi, one who is ancient. This is the Saguna Nirguna form. Aditya Varnam, with the effulgence of sun. Anoha Aniyan, subtler than the subtlest. Tamasaha Parastat, beyond darkness. Sunlight cannot illumine darkness, but our consciousness can illumine darkness. We are aware of darkness. Consciousness is not affected by darkness. To complete the verse, we need to take Yaha Anusmaret and Saha Paramam Purusham Yati from the previous verse. A Nishkama Bhakta must be a great yogi as well. It's not enough that he just chants the name, but there are a certain set of disciplines, and they are प्रयाणकाले मनसाचलेन भक्त्या युक्तो योगबलेन चैव भ्रुवोर्मध्ये प्राणमावेश्य सम्यक् satam param puruषमुपैति दिव्यम्. At the time of death, with a steady mind, endowed with devotion and the strength gathered by yoga, placing the breath properly between the eyebrows, he indeed reaches that limitless, effulgent person, is what the shloka says. In this shloka, the Lord is explaining the process. How do we withdraw? What do we do? Bruvor madhye pranamaveshya. Withdraw the life principle from every organ. Bring it to prana, to hridaya. This is given in detail in the Kathopanishad. From the hridaya to the sushumna nadi. A saguna nishkama Ishvara upasaka who seeks kramamukti must be a great yogi as well. Yoga balena cha eva. He must be adept in Ashtanga Yoga. Thereby, he can keep his mind steady. Manasa achalena. Bhaktya yukto. He needs to do this with intense devotion for Ishvara Prapti. In short, a saguna, nishkama upasaka, seeking kramamukti, must control his prana, withdraw the mind, direct it towards the Lord with total devotion, and thereby attain Parama Purusha Divya Sanithya. The next shloka talks about that imperishable goal. Yadaksharam Vedavido Vadanti, Vishanti Yadyatayaha, Yadyatayo Vitaragaha, Yadichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti, Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshi. Sangrahena in brevity. I'm going to explain this in brevity. He starts the topic here, but he concludes it. He takes it to the climax only in the 20th and verses onwards. Krishna briefly declares to us the glory of the Lord, that imperishable goal, that permanent source of peace, happiness, and security, which a committed seeker attains single-mindedly, turning away from the finite goals of life. Avitaragayati follows Brahmacharya. The word has a special meaning here. Brahman is Shastra and Charyam is to dwell upon. So dwelling upon the Shastra, you learn the ultimate goal. Understand the actual nature is what he says here. Then he proceeds to talk about the yogic concentration and the Omkara Dhyana in the next two verses. Sarvadvarani Sanyamya Mano Hridi Niruthyacha Murdna Dhayatmanah Pranamastito Yogadharanam. Meditate on Omkara, which is a Pratika Alambana. The sense organs are the gateways through which the world gate crashes into our minds without our permission, unless one is in control of himself. Hence, we need to withdraw them from the sense organs, the senses, that is Sarvadvarani Sanyamya. Withdraw the mind, take it into the heart, withdraw the prana, bring it to the crown of the head, to the Brahmarandra. Now, all these which seem difficult become possible only if the upasaka has been meditating upon Omkara, Yoga Dharana Astitaha, as he says, and continues to explain the next part, which says, Omityekaksharam Brahma Vyaharan Mam Anusmaran Yah Prayati Tyajan Deham Sayati Paramam Gatim. A Saguna Nishkama Upasaka endowed with Yoga Bala, with Bhakti, with Achalamanas, and who consciously trains himself in Namasmarana, but is still not a Jnani. Such an Upasaka, at the time of death, chants Om, and he then drops his physical body and travels to Krama Mukti, accompanied by gods themselves through a special path called Shuklagati. Om is just a representative here. It can be Om or any other Ishta Devatha Smarana that a person has been doing all his life. He can utter whatever he has practiced all his life through. The next shloka. Surrendering is a very important means to remember God. Ananya Chetasa Satatam Yomam Smarati Nityashaha Tasyaham Sulabha Partha Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha. Here, The land is trying to handhold us. He says it's not very difficult, it's easy. But when is it easy? Yaha mam nityam smarati. Only when you remember me every day. When the Saguna Nishkama Upasaka remembers him constantly without losing track of the fundamental. But that is without being distracted by the incidental roles of being a spouse, a parent, a professional, but remembers that fundamentally he is here for that yoga between the sadhaka and the sadhya, so that he becomes a siddha, but lives constantly with the thought of connecting with the Lord. Nitya yuktasya yoginah. It is easy for that upasaka who is ever integrated, ever balanced, and ever clear about his priorities in life. Handing everything over to God requires practice. Everything belongs to God. Krishna has explained all through that this is possible, that is, that complete surrender is possible at the time of death only through sheer practice, abhyasa. When the time of death comes, a Saguna Nishkama Upasaka quits worrying about the loved one's family, knowing that they will be taken care of by the Lord. Krishna declares that for such a Nishkama Bhakta, he is the easiest person to remember. Sulabham, as he says. A person who is attached to money always remembers money. In a very similar way, one who understands the value of the Lord always remembers the Lord. With this verse, Krishna concludes the answer to Arjuna's question, Antakala Ishvara Smaranam. The next slide, sir. There are some key words that we remember in these set of 10 verses. Very important verse. Remember me is the punch word, and he says this 7 times out of 10 verses. Smaran muktva, smaran bhavam, mam anusmara, mayarpita mano buddhihi, yah anusmaret, anusmaran, nityam smarati. And when do we remember him? Sada, sarveshu karyeshu, sarveshu kaleshu, satatam, nityashaha. How do we remember him? Chetasa nanyagamina, manasa achalena, sarvadvarani sanyamya, ananya chetasa. These are the words he uses. And what time? Antakala in the 5th one, Tyajatyante in the 6th verse, Prayana Kale in the 10th one, Tyajan Deham in the 13th verse. What are the prerequisites that one must have? Abhyasa yoga yuktena, by sheer practice, yoga balena, through a discipline, yoga dharanam, after withdrawing the senses. What happens? Mad bhavam yati, tad bhava bhavitaha. And he says, what is the guarantee? Natra samshayah. And he says, asamshayam. So you will definitely get me. In fact, we have glimpses of Ashtanga Yoga in these set of 10. Manasa achalena, yama, niyama and asana call for a mind that is controlled. Pranamaveshya samyak for pranayama. Sarvadvarani sanyamya for pratyahara. And yoga dharanam for, or manohridi niruddhaya for dharana, dhyana and samadhi. So this completes the set of verses of Bhagavad Gita. We are very familiar with the concept of karma yoga and bhakti yoga. Until now we have studied it. Keeping the spiritual goal of moksha in mind, the scriptures prescribe a course of discipline which we call as sadhana. And to obtain any goal, here in this context it is moksha, which is the sadhya, a series of discipline is given, and that is sadhanam. One who approaches that is a sadhaka, and once the goal is accomplished, he becomes a siddha. And there are 3 levels of sadhana given here, that is karma yoga, upasana yoga and jnana yoga. And yoga is that which puts the sadhaka and the sadhya together. Now these are 3 steps, the karma, upasana and jnana, and they are not alternatives. We do not have a choice there. It's not optional. We can't skip any of them. Karma yoga, as we know, is proper action with proper attitude. And what is to be done? Whatever we do must be an offering to Ishvara, as in the Ishvara Arpana Bhava. With an attitude of worship, I work without anxiety about future. The most important thing one needs to remember to get away from the work stress with a sense of ownership, without a sense of ownership and without complaining. And when we have given everything in the Arpana Bhava, whatever is the result we get becomes the Prasada. So it is received with Prasada Bhava. In fact, we have a very common prayer that we generally end all our prayers with as Kayena Vacha, Manasendriya Irva, Buddhyatvanava, Prakriteha Swabhavat. I do it by default. I do it because of my Swabhava, by the very Prakriti that I'm born into. Kayena Vacha, whatever I am doing. Karomi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayana yeti samarpayami. I offer all that I am doing to you. So this is the Ishvara Arpana Bhava and the Ishvara Prasada Bhava that one needs to remember. The next slide, sir. In fact, Bhakti Yoga, we have read chapters about it. We have heard so much about this. It is devotion to God. It's a course of discipline. Bhakti Yoga is not an exclusive or separate course of discipline at all. The first stage of Bhakti Yoga is Karma Yoga, Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Ishvara Prasada Bhava. The second stage is Upasana Yoga, Japa, Dhyana, meditate upon the Lord. And the third stage is Jnana Yoga. In fact, scriptures give three definitions of God depending on the maturity of the seeker. And they are, if I look at God as the creator of universe, Jagat Karta Ishvara, then I'm very comfortable with the Eka Rupa Ishvara Dhyanam. I see God as Rama, Krishna, or whatever name I choose to call. But one can become a bhakta of a greater understanding where Jagat Karana Ishvara, God becomes the cause of this entire universe. Then he is able to see that tattva in the entire Vishwa. Vishwarupa Ishvara Dhyana happens. Or Jagat Adhishtana Ishvara, God as the cause and the effect, as the very substratum of this universe, where we are able to appreciate him without any of these. In fact, God appears as the world with different forms, not affected by any form in which he appears. God is the very substratum of all the forms or the entire creation which he transcends. The next slide, sir. From the various aspects, we have the Bhaavana drishtya Bhakti, Saadhana drishtya Bhakti, and the Devatha drishtya Bhakti. The Manda Bhakta, Madhyama Bhakta, and the Uttama Bhakta. Or it could be from the Sadhana drishtya, Karma Rupa Upasaka, Upasana Rupa Upasaka, and Jnana Rupa Upasaka. Or Devatha drishtya, it could be Eka Rupa, Vishwarupa, and Arupa. With this, we complete the chapter of Karma, Bhakti, and the verses of Bhagavad Gita. I would like to end this up with a quote from DVG's Jivana Dharma Shastra, which is his commentary on Bhagavad Gita. He sums up the entire 8th chapter in these few lines. Brahma vadem, Jiva vadem, Karma vadem, Bauta Daiva Yajnangaladem, Gamya vadem, Dhyeyam vadem, Samyak Bodhanaya Nintu Partham Vedal, Uttaravanentu Kelkegam Ittu, Balikyentu, Jeevam Isha Smritiyol. Again, remember me. Jeevam Isha Smritiyol, Chitta Ekagrabhya Sadim, Yanutta Uttama Gatigerbudendu, Haribittaripam Mankutim. So he says, this is how the whole chapter is so beautifully concluded. With this, I conclude the presentation. Thank you for this opportunity, sir. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halya, for a brilliant exposition on this aspect of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where this question has been addressed to very clearly. Antakale, at the time of death, having given up Kalevaram, that means the body, Mam eva smaranam, that means remembering me alone, Yaha prayati, such a person travels, Saha yati, that person reaches Madbhavam. Shri Krishna says, such a person reaches my state. And here he gives an assurance, Atra, Na asti, about that, no samshaya, have no doubts whatsoever. The question is it possible to think about the Lord at the time of death? Now, this has been very nicely covered in today's class. And one of the important things is the thoughts that we entertain at every moment is determined either by my will or my vasanas. My vasanas is my habitual training. What happens as we get older? As we get older, our will becomes weaker, our vasanas or habitual training becomes stronger. According to Sri Krishna, the only way, therefore, is to develop Shubha Vasanas. That means our subconscious mind, that means in the background of my mind, the Lord must be there all the time. And the truth is that if this should happen, the rehearsal for our death must start right now. The other question is, we are all grihasthas. We have so many responsibilities. Is it possible for a person to remember God all the time? Now, when we take pictures, when we take a photography, sometimes we are interested in the person and then we give less importance to the background. Sometimes if the background is very important, we give a greater importance to the background. That means whenever I see anything, there is an object, there is also the background. So too, remember, our mind can do only one thing at a time. But in addition to my conscious mind, there is the subconscious mind. And in the subconscious mind, we need to be able to keep the Lord in the subconscious all the time. Just like a musician is always aware of the Shruti in the background. Just like a surgeon, while operating, he's focused on the field of his surgery, but his attention is also on the heartbeat of the patient. And the moment there is a change in the heartbeat, the surgeon will look up to the anesthetist whether something is okay, because the anesthetist is monitoring the patient also, and where the anesthetist will know what is the cause of the change in the heartbeat. So this is our exercise, that how we need to remember God all the time. How do we remember God all the time? Whenever we do any activity, like, for example, right from the time we wake up, the first time we wake up, bring in, whenever we begin any activity, just before we begin the class, before we end the class, before eating food, after eating food, when you get into your car, when you get out of the car, when you start any activity, when you conclude any activity. So can we see all our activity, wherever we are, can we remember God? And let that be a practice, let that be a vasana. I will conclude by talking about what is this Vedantic view of life and death. When we have been studying the Gita and the Upanishads for a long time, the message of all our acharyas based on Vedanta is our nature is Sat Chit Ananta. I am of the nature of existence, I am conscious, and both these are limitless. Now, once if this has percolated deep into me, I know that the real me has no death whatsoever. Few people who have gone through this have this realization, and they declare, Aham Brahmasmi. They are able to declare. Knowing life, and therefore what we need to see is, why is that some people are able to understand and some people are not able to understand? The more we understand what life is, we realize what death is. Usually we think death comes at the end, and we think that death is against life. The more we see is death and life are integral part. You cannot separate life from death. Where there is life, there is death. For example, life and death are an integral process, like day and night, like breathing in and breathing out. The example always given is that of breath. Each moment we breathe in, and the first act that a person does when a person is born is to breathe in. And the last act that we do is to breathe out. If we are able to live life every moment in its totality, you will see each moment we are born, and each moment we die. Life and death happens continually. And therefore, if you live life moment to moment, we will be able to understand that each moment we are born to the present and we are able to die to the past. Out of fear, out of our misunderstanding, we create a division. That the division is that life is good, death is bad. Life is to be desired, death has to be avoided. Somehow we need to protect ourselves against death. If you really analyze yourself and see who in me is afraid to die. See, life and death are integral processes, and therefore life cannot be afraid of an integral process. Further analysis will be clear that when I wake up, the ego is born, the mind is born, a pseudo entity is born. It is this ego which is afraid to die. And if you really see, it is the ego that is afraid to live also. Life and death are not opposites. Ego and death are opposites. Ego is against both life and ego is against death also. If you really look back, can we tell us exactly when we came into being? Did we come into being the moment we are born on our birthday? Or we were there even before that in our mother's womb? We really cannot pinpoint to say when life started. If you really look, we have been there from the very beginning. If there is a beginning, we will continue there till the very end. We are eternity. Forms change, bodies change, minds change. What we call life is an identification with a certain body. And what we call death is getting out of that form, getting out of that body, getting out of that identification. Again and again, Vedanta gives a great emphasis on body identification. We change houses, but however, if we get too identified with one particular house, leaving that house can be very painful. We need to be able to see body identification is something that we really need to work on. Death is beautiful for whom? Death is beautiful for those who have lived their life fully, those who have loved, those who have celebrated. So the concluding message for my class today would be, we really do not know when our last date would be. And therefore, live as if I'm going to die today, but work as if we are going to live forever. Hari Om. Thank you. We will have a teaching quiz, which will be conducted by Vani Bhaskar. Vani Bhaskar, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So we have a quiz from verses 5 to 14, and Srimati Purnima has kindly accepted to answer the questions. Thank you, Purnima. The first question.
Thank you, madam.
The first question, by saying, this is the verse of number 5 in the 8th chapter, by saying, remembering God at the time of death, is Krishna referring to Nirguna Ishvara Upasaka, Saguna Sakama Ishvara Upasaka, Vishwarupa Ishvara Upasaka, or Saguna Nishkama Ishvara Upasaka?
It is D. Saguna Nishkama Ishvara Upasaka.
Yeah, true. Next question. Krishna in the second line of the verse says, Eti Mad Bhavam, that is, attains my nature. Which of the following does a sadhaka attain? Sadhyo Mukti, Akrama Mukti, Krama Mukti, and Jivan Mukti.
Krama Mukti.
Yes. So, yes, next questions. So, what is Krama Mukti? Krama Mukti is the intermediate stage. Here, Krishna does not explain anything about this. He says the person goes to Brahmaloka, where Brahma is the Guru, and attains Brahma Gnanam, then gets liberated. Third question. What is the important requirement of a Saguna Nishkama Upasana? Answer please.
Vairagya.
Vairagya. Yes. So what is Vairagyam? Vairagyam is nothing but dispassion. So it is an important requirement for a Saguna Nishkama Upasana, because the Vairagi Bhakta becomes a Nishkama Upasaka. Fourth
Vani,
one.
can I request you to go a little slowly? These are all
Oh.
difficult questions. Please continue, but go a little slowly because it
Okay.
takes some time for us to understand the question and answer. Please proceed.
Okay. Yes. This is from the verse 6, Yam Vapi. So here the Krishna said that if you want to remember the Lord at the time of death, preparation should start very early in life. Is it true or false?
True. It's true.
Yes. Yes. The answer is true. Whatever one remembers at the time of death, one attains that state, all being always absorbed in such contemplation. Is it true or false?
True again. True again.
Yeah, true. The 8th verse, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktina Chetasa Ananya Gamina. So in this verse, Krishna advises to constantly think of God. How can one carry on with the worldly duties and do Ishvara Chintana simultaneously? So can you answer this, Purnima?
We can remember God in our subconscious mind and carry on our worldly duties in our conscious mind.
Very true. Swamiji says the subconscious mind can have Ishvara Chintana, while the conscious mind performs worldly duties. When one has time away from the worldly duties, the conscious mind also can be in Ishvara Chintana. So here Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gives a very beautiful example. So he gives an example of the mother and the baby. Though the mother is doing all the worldly duties, she will always have her mind on the child. Thank you, sir. Next question. In this verse, number 9, what are the attributes of the Lord mentioned here? Kavim, Puranam, Anushasitaram. So can you name the attributes, Purnima?
In the first line, it is Kavim, Puranam, Anushasitaram.
Yeah.
Shall I continue or after reading this?
Yes, yes, you can.
Then Anorniyam, Sarvasya Dhataram, Achintya Rupam, Aditya Varnam, and Tamasah Parastat.
Yes, very good. So so we have the 8 attributes in this verse. Kavim is omniscient one. Puranam is the most ancient one. Anushasitaram means karma pala dhata, one who gives karma pala to all jivas according to the laws of karma. Anuraniyam, that is one who is very subtler than the subtlest. So it is subtler than the atom also. Sarvasya dhataram, one who is a substratum. So he is a support of the entire creation, being the very cause of the creation. Achintya Rupam, one who is incomprehensible, that is beyond our thoughts, one who cannot be objectified by the mind. He is always a subject. Aditya Varnam, one who is brighter than the sun, that is, he illuminates everything, including the sun. Tamasa Parastat, which is unaffected even by the darkness. Next question. So this is verse number 10. Here, to be able to withdraw the prana, one should be able to have perfect balance of mind. That is, achalena manasa. Both these are possible because of what? As per this verse.
It is because of yoga balena.
Yes.
The strength of one's yoga.
Yeah. So the strength of yoga bala, one can withdraw the prana and direct it through the Sushumna Nadi, and while doing all these things, one should enjoy mind, which is very steady. That is achalena manasa. It is steady, focused, and at the time of death for remembering God. Next one. In the 11th verse, what does Vita Raga mean? That is one who is highly passionate for God, one who is full of desires, one who has turned away from the finite goals of life, and none of the above.
It is C, one who has turned away from finite goals of life.
Yeah, that is the correct answer. So when one is turned away from the finite goals of life, they have attempted all other goals and found that everything other than God is it is not true. They come under apara prakriti. So God alone represents the para prakriti. So he has turned away from the finite goals of life. Next one. Why does Krishna say that one must withdraw from all the sense organs? So this is from the verse 12. Why does Krishna say that one must withdraw from all the sense organs first?
The sense organs are directed outwards. So we think of the world through all the world thoughts comes through all these sense organs. That is why we have to first shut the sense organs.
Yeah, because they're the gateways. So
Yeah.
the sense organs are the gateways through which the world enters. So into the mind. And without our permission, it gets inside. So once the world enters the mind, then each one will trigger a line of thinking. Therefore, if one must remember God, first thing is they have to shut the sense organs. Next one. 14th verse. According to this verse, who will be in constant remembrance of the Lord? Ananya cheta satatam yomam smarati nityashaha. According to this verse, who will be in constant remembrance of the Lord?
A yogi who is nitya yukta.
Yeah. So who is upasaka, who is nitya yukta? That is, who is ever integrated, ever balanced, clear about his priorities in life, and who is a seeker will practice this without fail. So now we have questions based on Tattva Bodha, that is Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Choose the right answer. Sadhaka through sadhana attains sadhyam to become siddha. Sadhana through sadhaka attains sadhyam to become siddha. Sadhyam through sadhana attains sadhaka to become siddha. None of the above.
It is the first one. Sadhaka through sadhana attains sadhyam to become siddha.
Yeah, true. Next one. Spiritual sadhana is presented in which three levels? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Gnana Yoga, Kayika, Vachika and Manasika, Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti.
Is it Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana?
No, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana is to attain Gnana Yoga. So here it is spiritual sadhana presented in three levels. So the answer will be Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga and Gnana Yoga.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Bhaavana, drishtya, Bhakti, trayam, where Bhakti is love of God, is physical puja, verbal puja and mental puja, Manda Bhakti, Madhyama Bhakti, Uttama Bhakti, Japa, Dhyana, Tyaga and none of the above.
Manda Bhakti, Madhyama Bhakti, Uttama Bhakti.
Yeah, so here it shows the level of the Bhakti in the Bhakta. So this is Bhavana, Drishtya, Bhakti. Next question, please. Sadhana, Drishtya, Bhakti, Trayam, where Bhakti is from the standpoint of Sadhana. So Karma Yoga Rupa Bhakti, Upasana Yoga Rupa Bhakti, Gnana Yoga Rupa Bhakti. The next one is Gnana, Dana, and Tapas. Yajna, Dana, Tapas. Third one is Satyam, Gnana, Anantam, and none of the above.
It is the first one. Karma Yoga Rupa Bhakti, Upasana Yoga Rupa Bhakti, and Gnana Yoga Rupa Bhakti.
True. Because this is from the standpoint of sadhana. So the answer is true. Karma Yoga. Devatha, drishtya, Bhakti, trayam, depending upon understanding of God, is Eka Rupa Bhakti, Aneka Rupa Bhakti, Arupa Bhakti. Kayika Bhakti, Vachika Bhakti, and Manasika Bhakti. Means love, end love, self-love, and none of the above.
It is Eka Rupa Bhakti, Aneka Rupa Bhakti, and Arupa Bhakti.
Yes. So here, Eka Rupa Bhakti, Aneka Rupa Bhakti, Arupa Bhakti is the correct answer. True. Say true or false. Yoga is union of seeker and goal. That is sadhaka and sadhyam. True or false?
True.
True. Adhama karmani gives spiritual elevation.
False.
Yeah. Panchamahayagna is uttama karmani.
It's true.
Yes. Uttama karmani is also called nishkama karmani.
True.
Yes. Karma yoga is not proper action with proper attitude.
False.
Yes. Bhakti yoga is common to all other yogas, namely Karma yoga, Upasana yoga, and Jnana yoga.
True.
True. Rajasika Karmani is also called Sakama Karmani.
True.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you.
Thank you, Purnima.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vani Madam, for a very well-crafted and enjoyable quiz. Many thanks to Dr. Ahalya Ma'am for a wonderfully educational session. That brings us to the end of today's class. During the next class on Friday, the 25th November, we will have a recap session of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga. Let us log in at 6:45 p.m. sharp. We conclude our class with our usual Shanti mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.